If you're struggling with your work-life balance and just can't seem to manage your many responsibilities well without sacrificing self-care, you're not alone. May I suggest our Life Balance Planner, which Book Authority listed as one of the top work-life balance resources to be released in 2021. It's a 3-month, undated planner with a uniquely integrated life balance tracking system, as well as self-care planning for your daily, weekly, and monthly routine. For a limited time, you can purchase your first planner for 30% off at paulwcroswell.com using promo code PODPLANNER. That's Pod Planner, no spaces. We're also rolling out a new feature where for just $1.90 a week, you never have to worry about buying a new planner again. How amazing is that? With this subscription, we'll send you a new planner every 3 months before your current planner fills up. To get your planner today, visit paulwcroswell.com/planner. Act now, okay? Let's dive in.
Because I was starting to get involved in working with people that were struggling with mental health challenges. And I started to do research. I went, just a minute, that's me. That's how I behave. That's why I have a very small inner circle of friends, is because I've pushed them all away because of my behavior. And it was at that stage that I realized I had to, make some very drastic changes. And what was interesting was, I remember I traveled to Winnipeg, Manitoba to do a 1-day workshop on mentoring youth. And my good wife, Deborah, came with me. And at one time point in the conversation, actually, I was doing a segment on mental health, and somebody had asked a question, and she popped up and actually she said that he doesn't realize how lucky he is, because if things would not have changed, he would have lost the 3 of us. So my wife and my daughter and my son, she
Yeah.
said, we weren't hanging around. Life's too short. We don't have to put up with that.
Welcome to the Paul Croswell audio experience.
Hello and welcome back. This is Paul, of course, your host, and I'm happy I get to be a part of your day. My conversation today is with Doug Lawrence, a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer who served more than 25 years in the force. Doug is an author, the author of You Are Not Alone, an Amazon #1 bestseller. He is a PTSD survivor, an international certified mentor, and the founder of IMC, the International Mentoring Community. In our conversation today, Doug shares transparently about his own journey with PTSD and how he almost lost his family because of it. Some of the other things we discuss includes Doug's work with mentoring young entrepreneurs for the Richard Branson Foundation, as well as U.S. military personnel who are transitioning to civilian life, and developing other mentors is a big part of his life as well. We talk about much, much more, so I hope you're ready. Doug, welcome to the show.
Yes, and thank you very much for having me on your show today.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. How are you today? How's life?
Um, Life is, and I'm sure we're going to get into some of the sort of things that have fostered or driven where I am today. We'll certainly talk about some of those. But the way I look at it is, every day that I wake up in the morning and put both feet on the floor, that's a good day. And that's, to be able to move forward with that. And um, like this morning, I had a mentoring session with a young lady who is from Sweden, and got to have a conversation with her about a number of different things. So
Yeah.
that's what, it's engagements, relationships like that, really give me that sense of giving back and doing some good things.
Yeah. And you saying that reminded me of a TED talk I watched on happiness, and it was by the current lead scientist for the study. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's, from what I understand, the longest study on happiness to date. And one of the biggest findings that they got from that study is that the people who live the longest and happiest lives are the people who report consistently that they're surrounded by people they love and people who make them feel deeply loved. It's all about the relationships, but the quality of the relationships. There is almost no correlation between their stuff and their happiness as much as there was between the relationships they have and their happiness. So I mean, scientifically, you are onto something.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because I actually did a bunch of research on happiness and I wrote I think one or two blog articles, but where I got a large part of my information from was there's actually a country, and I think it's Bhutan, Bhutan,
Hmm.
that's what their whole culture, the whole country's culture is premised on creating a culture of happiness. And they've got, I think it's 9 different pillars or 9 different criteria that have to be met every year in order to be able to foster that culture of happiness. And it was, I actually saw a TED talk as well, and it was actually one of the government officials from, can't remember exactly if it was the head of the country or not, but spoke about the work that they did and all those things. And it was
Yeah.
just, it was so powerful that, when how come there, how come there aren't many, a whole lot more countries that would follow in those footsteps?
You would think that that would make sense, like that would be a natural progression and direction, for us. But it's surprising. Well, I guess not too surprising that that's not the case, but it's sad, when you look at the grand scheme of things. I'm gonna have to look that up. That sounds really interesting. Bhutan, Butan, right?
Bhutan.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Butan. Yeah, that may be the next vacation spot for me.
Well, and the pictures that he showed while he was doing his TED talk, it was just, I was the same sort of thing that, one of these days that's going to have to be on my bucket list as well, because it was so serene and so, um, it just, you felt at peace with, just from the pictures, you felt at peace with everything else around you. So, and gosh only knows we sure do need something like that nowadays.
Yeah, and I think the work you're doing is contributing to helping to build that. So I do appreciate that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
yeah. Now, if I remember right, if I read this right, you you work with people all over the world, but there are two main kind of groups that you're working with. And I don't know if this is outdated information or not, but you work with groups in the Caribbean as well as in the U.S. right now. But Canada is your home, right? Are you still based in Canada?
I am. Yes, I'm based in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. That's where sort of my home base is. But yeah, you're correct in that I do work with the Sir Richard Branson Entrepreneur Program in the Caribbean. So
Hmm.
I'm mentoring young entrepreneurs there. And I'm also working with American Corporate Partners in the United States, which is an organization that helps military personnel transition from military life to civilian life.
Yeah.
And as mentors, there are some things we need to be mindful of when we're dealing with service people. Um, so there's that part. And then I am also a volunteer mentor with an organization here in Canada called Futurepreneur,
Mm.
and it's same sort of thing. It's an organization focused on helping young entrepreneurs get started with. They have a vision, a dream of a business that they want to get kickstarted, and they work with them. They provide them with mentors to help them move forward with their journey.
That is really, really exciting. And there's so much there that I want to dive into, and I think in the course of our conversation they'll probably come back up, hopefully. And if not, it just gives me a reason to invite you back on and have another conversation. So again, no pressure. Um
None, none.
so you do a lot of really amazing work. Um but before stepping into I guess mentorship full time like you're doing it now, you served, like we talked about, in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for 25 years. I mean, that is quite a commitment, quite a time in service. And as a result of that, 25 years before you retired, but as a result of that, you navigated PTSD from that service. What was that like for you? When did you first realize you were dealing with PTSD?
There was, well, my behavior was one thing. That was sort of a red flag, and I could see that if I didn't do something, that it was it could lead to something more catastrophic than what it did. Like my dear sweet wife and my two kids put up with quite a bit of bad behavior from me, and what I what I turned to was I turned to, alcohol as my crutch. That was what was supposed to help all the pain go away, and that was supposed to make things better, when in fact all it does is it makes things worse. And
Hmm.
then as a result of that, I became verbally abusive. I think I was only physically abusive once with my wife, and I basically I scared myself
Yeah.
because I'm that's not who I am as a person, and so I ended up um, eh, I ended up reaching out for help, but there was no one there other than my wife and two kids. There was really no one there to help. There was no support system in place for people. I'd go out on a call and I'd witness something horrific that had taken place, and normally you would hope that when you came back from dealing with that, that you had somebody you could sit down and kind of debrief and go through it, but that was not the case. In fact, it was kind of like suck it up, buttercup, and just get on with life. And that's, as I know now from all the research I've done, that's not the answer. That's not the solution. That people do need to talk their way through some of these traumatic events that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Um, because if they don't, it stays inside you and just keeps bubbling, and you keep having to deal with it. So um, I I I guess to be able to, when did I realize in infinitely that um, I had or was still dealing with post-traumatic stress? I would have to say that when I started to do some research, because I was starting to get involved in working with people that were struggling with mental health challenges, and I started to do research, I went, just a minute, that's me. That, that's how I behave. That's why I have a very small inner circle of friends, is because I've pushed them all away because of my behavior. And it was at that stage that I realized I had to, make some very drastic changes. And what was interesting was I remember I traveled to Winnipeg, Manitoba to do a 1 day workshop on mentoring youth, and my good wife Deborah came with me. And at one time point in the conversation, actually I was doing a segment on mental health, and somebody had asked a question, and she popped up, and actually she said that he doesn't realize how lucky he is, because if things would not have changed, he would have lost the three of us. So my wife and my daughter and my son, she
Yeah.
said, we weren't hanging around. Life's too short. We don't have to put up with that. And that was that was a sign then. And then once I started to do the research and stuff that I did do, then I realized, now I understand why she said what she said.
Yeah. And I mean, that must have been such a a scary season to go through, right? To it sounds almost out of body, like you're living it and you're acting out the stress that's built up over the years, but you have no support, no control over how you're navigating it. Um, and I appreciate your vulnerability and your transparency because I think it's important for people to hear, especially for folks who find themselves in that place, that there's hope, that there's healing. Especially if you're in a place right now, if you're listening and you feel like you don't have support, you don't have someone or some ones you can turn to, that even from that place there's hope of healing. And to help further that point, what what was the turning point for you? At what point did you feel like you were getting the help you needed or beginning to make the changes necessary to get healthy?
It was, it, to be honest, I still believe to this day it was the words coming out of Deborah's mouth that said I would have lost my family because family was important. You certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't think so with the way I had treated them, but
It
I
was like a
had to
wake
make
up call.
it was definitely a wake up call. I had to make that change or I was going to lose what was near and dear to my heart. And she deserves to be treated better than that as well. So I had to make those changes.
Yeah. And when you began to make that change, I ultimately what led you from that place to where now you're able to actually journey with people who are dealing with PTSD? What were the things or habits or tools or maybe even people that ultimately became helpful and pivotal in you overcoming that and getting to a healthy place?
Well, when I think back now that what started that and got me to where I am today was number one was the acceptance of the fact that I had issues. I had problems that I had to deal with. But what was just as important, if not more important, was now all of a sudden I had people reaching out to me to help them. And that was how can I, if I'm not, that's one of the things we always talk about when we're teaching people how effective mentoring is you have to be whole yourself before you take on somebody else's negative energy. Because
Hmm.
if you don't, that's just going to add to all the turmoil that you've already got inside your body. And you need to be able to deal with that. So I think that it was when I started to see the mentoring and the referrals coming from the mentoring I was doing, and then people coming to me with different obstacles and challenges, such as dealing with, stress, anxiety, mental health in general, that I needed to be in a better place in order to be able to help them. And here we are, we're saying, there's the stigmatism around mental health, which, if somebody says, oh, I've got mental health issues, people think, well, that person's crazy. Well, no, they're
Hmm.
not, right? They're
Yeah.
not. But it it's being able to create that safe place for people that they can reach out and say, I need help. And I did. I reached out and asked, for my, good wife and children to give me another chance. And I was reaching out for their help because
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't getting it from very many other places, if any.
And reaching out for help is a very vulnerable thing to do. And especially if you have, whether it's a police or military background, there's this idea that you should almost always have the answer. You should always appear tough and together, and to come to the realization and really kind of submit to give into the reality that I'm in a position right now where I don't feel I have all the strength or all the information I need in and of myself, and I need to reveal that in order to get the help I need.
And
Yeah.
And I need to be able to, when I do get that help, is I don't go, I'm okay, now I'm done.
Yeah.
Because the journey is an ongoing journey, and you will have good days and you'll have bad days. And on those bad days, you still need to be able to, as I like to describe it, come out of my closet and extend my hand and stay and say, I still need help. I need you
Yeah.
to help guide me on this journey, because the road all of a sudden has gotten rocky and I don't know which way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me of I think it's I think it's Alcoholics Anonymous in the recovery process. It doesn't matter how far removed you get. So if you're 1 year sober or 10 years sober, they're always, and I always find it interesting, they'll always talk about themselves as a recovering alcoholic, even if they've been sober for 15 years. They'll say, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm still recovering because it's an ongoing process and you have to be intentional in that way.
Yeah, we went through that with my father, who was an alcoholic, but he he admitted that he had drinking problems uh, up to a certain point, and then all of a sudden he said, "I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink anymore." But
Yeah.
and it was to try and help him understand and appreciate the fact that just because you don't drink right now doesn't mean you're still not an alcoholic. And he went, I think it was about 7 years without anything to drink. And then, he would have the odd glass of wine. And sometimes that's all it takes. That's the catalyst you need to
Yeah.
put you back into drinking again. So, because I know for myself, I haven't had anything to drink since, and part of it was health reasons, but um, since 2020, I guess.
Okay.
And it was um, I was glad that I was put in a position where I had to deal with it, because it's definitely made a difference with the relationships that I had with my wife and with my two children.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a bit about mentoring,
Okay.
because I mean you have extensive experience and knowledge in mentoring. You're the co-founder of, I believe it's the International Mentoring Community. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. And you yourself, I mean, you've been mentoring for how long now?
Well, officially full time since 2009.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's been well over a couple of years,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
just the full time portion. Not to mention before that, having walked with people. At what point did you decide, I should be certified in this and really make it a, a priority or a focus for me?
It was interesting, because what had happened was I was job coaching university college students, and we'd help them get hired, and they'd be working in the workforce, and then they something would happen and they wouldn't know how to deal with it, so they'd come to me and they'd say, how do we deal with this? And so I'd ask them questions to help guide them through to where the answer was. And referral after referral, and eventually a few of them came to me one day and said, you need to do this for a living. We can't afford to pay you, but I'm sure somebody could. And so I okay, I need to do some research then to sort of see what the market looks like. And it was right around that time frame, 2009, I think it was, that I I had this vision. I had this vision that there every place I turned there was a certification body of sorts for coaches, but there
Yeah.
was never anything for mentoring. And so part of my vision was to create an independent body for the certification of mentors. And that's that's kind of the path that I took. Was um, when I went full time, it was to kind of package up all of that stuff, find a certification body that could help me with the certification of mentors and then move forward with that vision. And then that's kind of, I did that. And then I think about 6 or 7 years later, I made another shift where the mentoring community said, it's nice that you've got it so we can be certified based on our knowledge, but we think we want to be certified based on competence. And so the existing certification body that I was working with didn't want to get involved in the certification from a competence perspective, and so
Hmm.
I found a business partner in Alberta uh, that was actually starting to explore much the same sort of stuff. So we kind of put our two heads together and we came up with the International Mentoring Community, which is the independent body for the certification of mentors based on uh, based on competence.
That's so cool. That is really cool. So like you're not just a mentor, you're a mentor of mentors at this point, which is
Yes.
really kind of exciting.
Yeah, I try because of some of the other, like some of the work I do in the mental health space. So I try to bring people along to, because one person alone is not going to deal with the silent pandemic, as I call it, which is the mental health challenges that people are dealing with, and we don't have the support structure, or certainly not a support structure to the extent that we do need to have. So
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so it's being able to get other people to see what I see in other people to help them heal, number one, from the mental health, but from the leadership perspective, it's to be able to give them the skills they need to help us lead the country, the world for that matter, into the future.
Yeah. So if someone wanted to become a certified mentor, what what do you look for? What do you require? What does that process look like?
So and we're going through some changes, some modifications to the actual certification, um, from the aspect of, instead of it being, a certified competent mentor, you're going to be a certified practitioner of
Okay.
mentoring. So it has, because I'm all about the practice of mentoring, and I have a deep, what we call a deeper, I have a deep, rich mentoring practice where I I work with people who normally would be struggling to find somebody to mentor them. But um, the process itself starts out with an individual completing a self-assessment where they assess themselves against 75 or 79 action outcome statements, which are kind of like competency statements, but we call them action outcomes.
Okay.
Um, so you go through and you complete that, and the idea behind it is, in order to advance any further, what you need to be able to do is all 79 of those statements need to be yes.
Okay.
And if you say no, then we have to figure out how can we get you the experience you need in order to be able to turn that no to a yes? Can we get the knowledge that you need to have in order to turn that no to a yes? And then for the ones that you put marked as yes, we need to be able to then determine, where did you get that knowledge or experience from, because you have to be able to substantiate, yes, I got this knowledge from, I had this mentoring engagement, or I did this, or I did that. And
Yeah.
so you go through that. So you have that plus, I think it's 2 or 3 case studies that you have to do. Um, and then there's some other case study like work that you have to do as well. And then sort of the real test is you go through what we call a verification interview, where you
Hmm.
have to verify that you have A, the experience, and B, the knowledge in order to be certified as a mentor.
Oh, okay. And how long does that process normally take?
You know, if I sit down today and start to work on it, it would probably take me about 3 months to get all the documentation and everything. And for people that maybe are a little shy on experience, it could take more.
Yeah.
When I play the role of the intake manager, so I'm the sort of the gatekeeper that you have to get by, if you want to call it that, in order to get a little further into the certification process. And
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable in watching you move forward if you've accumulated about 20 to 40 hours of mentoring, and that you have it documented in a mentoring log.
Yeah.
And it's a diverse set of experiences that touch on a number of different areas. And so I'm, like I said, I'm more comfortable if somebody comes to me and they've got 20 to 40 hours of mentoring. Um, you could do it with less, but then my concern would be when you hit the verification, you don't have the examples that you can draw on to be able to say, this is where I
Yeah.
did this in this particular situation, and here was the outcome.
Yeah, and I think it's necessary. I think for a responsibility like that, where you're effectively partnering in people's lives around most likely fairly sensitive issues for them at minimum, especially if you're going to be influencing their thought process, their mindset, ultimately their emotional and sometimes their mental health. I think it's important to be well processed, well vetted, well trained. And I like that process. I like that your process is in depth, that that there are checkpoints to make sure that someone is in fact qualified or prepared or well trained for the task of mentoring, I think it's important, and um, I don't think anyone will argue with that. I'm sure that there are some folks who are just kind of like, "Oh, this is too much. You're asking for too much," but those are probably the individuals who probably shouldn't be in that position, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
Well, and the other part of that is that, yes, you can mentor, but you also have to understand that the person you're mentoring is not going to get the full benefit of a mentoring relationship, if you haven't had the training. So one of four reasons mentoring programs fail is lack of training.
Mm,
So so going right in, if you don't have the training, and the certification can very much be part of that. If you don't have that, then, all of a sudden you're setting yourself up for failure.
yeah, yeah, and I think the added part of that is your failure has a direct impact on someone or multiple someone's.
Well, especially, that's a good point that you've raised, is especially if, you're talking about an organization where you've gone in and set up mentoring, but for whatever the reason, the costs are just nobody buys into wanting to take any training of any sort. You've put yourself in a place or in a position where, it's not going to be, I like to call it, a deeper, richer mentoring experience. They're not going to get the benefit of all of that, and it could very well hamper the success of a mentoring program that you're trying to implement in an organization.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentor individuals, but as we talked about earlier, you work with organizations as well on some fairly big topic, like with the Richard Branson organization as well as the military. Um, how did you get involved with some of these larger groups? If you don't mind going down that road for a few minutes.
No, I don't. And, we can start with American Corporate Partners. Was
Mhm.
I saw that when I think back now, I think that I had a news feed that came to me, and it talked about American Corporate Partners. And I went, okay, what's that all about? And so I explored a little bit further and I found out that what it was an organization that I believe it's funded by federal government. And what they do is they work with military personnel who are retiring and moving into civilian life. So one of the individuals that I'm mentoring, um, we've she's been able to secure employment. So and I think she's not due to officially retire till I think it's November-ish. And so she's already secured employment. And, and now we're pushing out the, the frequency of meetings. We're going to be pushing some of that out and we can always bring it back in if we have to. But for now, the focus will now be shifting to more about not so much the professional, the career development side, because we've kind of got that started already.
Yeah.
But now the shift, how I like to do it, and this is kind of backwards to my usual approach, but is that now I want to spend some time on the personal growth. So I want to deal with if there are issues of self-esteem and all that sort of stuff, or self-confidence, or are there some mental health issues we need to have a conversation about? So now we're going to start to kind of dabble in some of those and sort of determine, are there things we need to address, or are we in a good place that we don't have to spend too much time on those particular things. So
Okay.
that's the American Corporate Partners side. On the Richard Branson side with the young
Well,
entrepreneur.
before we go into that one, I just had a question on
Okay.
the American corporate uh, side. It's now you're working with military personnel in transitioning into civilian life, right? And this is something my wife and we've talked about multiple times. Just that there really needs to be a better and healthier process of helping people get acclimated after being in the military. I mean, I think across the board, everyone is pretty agreed, unanimously on that. So I really applaud your effort in helping to put something in place to actually help these individuals. Uh, as you walk with them, as you navigate that, what are some of the bigger issues that you're seeing consistently with individuals who are trying to transition healthily from military life to civilian life?
Depending on their service, so what they experienced, what I've found so far is that we need to address, talk about, speak to the mental health side of things.
If you struggle to reach the goals you set for yourself, the good news is it's most likely not because you're lazy or that you lack discipline. Statistically speaking, you're most likely struggling to reach your goals because your life is out of balance. In 2017, the Harvard Business Review reported that the United States spends more than $190 billion with a B, billion dollars to address the physical and psychological effects of burnout in the average working professional. And these numbers are from before the pandemic, so who knows what it is now. The point is, anyone trying to reach a goal while navigating burnout, whether consciously or subconsciously, is not set up to succeed. This was my experience until I discovered the life balance approach to reaching your goals and changing your life. This approach to reaching your goals takes into account your life balance as you work towards your goals. Subsequently, it basically guarantees success for almost any goal you're trying to reach. And I know that is a big promise, but it is very much realistic and very much possible. In my best-selling book, Life Balance, I outlined the principles of this formula. And due to popular demand, the online course for the book is now available. In this course, I walk you through each and every principle individually and how to apply it to your life. It's a self-paced course, so you can take it on your own time and go through it as quickly or as slowly as you would like. Every purchase includes a digital copy of my book, Life Balance, the Life Balance Workbook in PDF format, and the Life Balance Planner, also in PDF format. For a limited time, you can purchase this course at 50% off when you use promo code PODCAST. To purchase this course today, visit paulwcroswell.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
I've had individuals that had PTSD that would be triggered by things that you and I may take for granted as being, fun and great, like fireworks.
Yeah.
Fireworks being set off triggers some not so pleasant memories. And so we need to be able to provide them with the tools they need to be able to deal with that. But we also need to have mentors that understand that, you sometimes you don't have to say anything. You just need to be quiet and be there, let them talk their way through things and and then see where it goes from there. But to me, like I'm just thinking back over the number of different folks that I've worked with, and the large well, I guess every single one of them has had some form of post-traumatic stress to deal with. Because it's not just, and that's the thing we sometimes get caught up with is, especially with military, is that we think about the aspect of it being um, it's all my trauma comes from being exposed to frontline wartime type activity, but in fact, it comes from a number of different places. It can be from the loss of a fellow service person. It can be from a number, witnessing different sorts of traumatic events.
Yeah.
It can be from, you know, coming home and struggling with rebuilding the relationship with your significant other and the family and all of that, who may or may not have been prepped enough to understand what some of the behaviors are going to be and how we're going to deal with that.
Yeah. And it would be really interesting to see someone, whether, that might be you in a year or two, but partner directly with the military to build out a full kind of exiting process, that includes mental health work as well as just physical acclimation and adjusting, determining what that process should look like, what kind of work needs to happen with the family, which is a great point you brought up, before they even enter back into the mix. What services can be offered to the family to help them prepare to have their loved one back from the military service, and then of course what can be done for the military serviceman or servicewoman to prepare them to adjust in. And it I do hope that at some point in the near future that's something that gets prioritized and really begin to build out. But in the meantime, I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible and so severely needed, so
Thank you.
desperately needed.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now the other side of this is the Richard Branson Young Entrepreneurs piece. Now, how did that happen?
It was much the same thing. I think I saw uh, in my one of my news feeds that the Branson organization had this young entrepreneur program. I think they have it in a couple places, but the one I'm familiar with is the Caribbean, and they were looking for mentors. And I thought, hmm, okay, that sounds interesting. And so I put my application in, and it took quite a while for me to get, sort of to get the call. And now I've been working with them. I've probably had four, I think it is, four young entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I just got asked if I would take on an extra one here just the last few days. So I'll be working with um, two, two or three of young entrepreneurs that are part of the Branson program. So
Yeah.
yeah, and same sort of thing. It's very diverse industries because I don't think I've had anyone who's been from the same industry. So because I think I've had food and beverage, I've had information technology consulting, I've had public speaking and communication, I've had uh, I've got one or two more that, so different industries and stuff, but the the mentoring process and concepts is works the same no matter what the industry is.
Yeah.
So it's been good that way.
And I think that's the beauty and the power of mentorship is, it doesn't matter what your walk of life is, what background you have, what field you're in, you can benefit and grow from effective mentorship.
Yeah.
You really can. And I'm excited about the idea that this is in the Caribbean because I'm originally Jamaican from the island of Jamaica, not New York, Jamaica. Always love to specify that. While I live in the States now, I'm originally Jamaican. And being a young entrepreneur myself, having navigated a few different small businesses, I clearly you hear about entrepreneurs from the States, from Europe, and India is a really big one right now, but I often don't hear much about entrepreneurs or development for entrepreneurs in the Caribbean.
Yeah, and it's like they do it's a regular cycle of people that they put through the program and and the part I like about it is that you go through the program and you get your piece of paper saying you've completed the program, but the Branson people don't just go, okay, you're done, away you go. They still are there. If you need help or guidance, they're there to help you. If you stumble and fall, they pick you up, dust you off, and say, okay, go in that direction. And so I'm very impressed with the support that comes from the Branson folks and the fact that they're continuing to work with young entrepreneurs and help them move forward. And we need a lot more of that. And, there's still, one of the things that I'm finding now, because I have another individual here in Canada that is through the one mentorship program that I work with. And, you know, there's still mental health issues and challenges that you need to, as a mentor, that you need to kind of be watching for. And when they do kind of pop up, you need to be able to speak to that. You don't need to, in fact, you shouldn't diagnose or prescribe or anything like that, but you
Yeah,
should, you can guide.
yeah, yeah. And that's the beautiful part about mentorship. And it because you are in a position to where if there is something that as a mentor you see, you're like, I think this requires clinical help. I think it would be helpful for you to sit with a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist and dive deeper into this. As an effective and well-trained mentor, that's something you can do. You can point them to that help, but when that help isn't necessary and you're just dealing with what's in front of you, I mean, you can go as deep as necessary to really help them to grow and get past that. And I, I love the idea of working with young entrepreneurs. I think I think because selfishly, because I myself am a young entrepreneur. And so just the idea, and I don't have a mentor walking with me in building any of this out or launching any of the things I'm launching. It's been really very much trial and error and figuring it out and seeing what works and what doesn't. And it's such a long process that could be so much shorter if you have a mentor. And so I like that. I like that you offer that and you provide that for individuals.
It certainly, it gets both of us thinking. It gets both of us exercising our creative juices to be able to come up with, sort of different approaches and different solutions. And, what would happen if we were to do this, or what would happen if we were to do that. So it's putting that sort of messaging out there, and you'll notice that I always use the we and the us versus you. So I try to make it a collaborative approach to moving forward. And and it can be very well, I don't want to give you the answers, so I'll always pose, what would happen if we were to do this, this, or this, for as an example. And it always seems to work well.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, what are some of the things that you generally dive into? And you touched on it just now with some of what you said, but when you work with entrepreneurs, young or old entrepreneurs, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that generally comes up? I know when I'm, sitting with someone, I coach uh sometimes, and so when I'm sitting with someone, there are a lot of mindset things that will come up, and just keeping themselves in a good, healthy mindset to function, or either they're dealing with mindset things that are keeping them from functioning, uh just being productive. So as you walk with young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, what are some of the things that surface uh as just kind of consistent challenges for them?
A lot of it is money.
Yeah,
So, right,
I
it's
can attest to that one.
yeah. And when I started back in 1992, money was a huge issue for me as well. And you just hope that at some stage that it doesn't become an issue. But
Yeah,
um, money is definitely, when think across the board to all the folks I'm working with right now, um, money has at some time point played has been brought into the decision-making process as to, you know, can we move forward? Can we do this? Can we sustain our growth? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it's always a money particular issue that needs to be addressed. The other part is that, and I'm a huge advocate for self-care. So make sure that, and that's what I'm finding in a lot of situations lately, especially with COVID and all that sort of stuff, is if I don't stay healthy, I allow my system to get run down, I get sick, then I can't generate revenue.
yeah,
So it's a matter of, of all of that. And then we're going through with some folks, I'm going through with creating a task list of all the things you're working on and prioritizing them based on where you think your organization or your company is going to go, so that you're not expending time, effort, and money on things that really are not going to benefit, the growth of your company. And the other part is to have a business plan and a strategic plan in place so that when we go to have conversations, we can refer back to be able to say, I'm doing activity A and B because it's going to help with my longer term vision. Like the chat we had this morning, we I've I've provided a template or a concept that deals with what are the things you're working on today. Let's identify short term, long term. Let's prioritize those. And then I want you to consider, what will you do if something new gets added to your plate? What happens to those 8 tasks and those the long term ones? Do they stay in the same priority, or do they get shifted? If they get shifted, which direction? And then how are you going to manage your time accordingly to be able to deal with the new stuff plus still maintain the old?
yeah. Now, all of those issues hit right at home. I mean,
Yeah.
it's right at the center of life as an entrepreneur. These are all the things that you're dealing with on a daily basis. Um, and for anyone listening who might be an entrepreneur, I'd highly encourage you to take a few minutes and make sure you visit the link. There are the links. There will be multiple, and dive a little deeper into everything that Doug offers. Clearly, there's a lot to grow from and benefit from and learn from. Um, I'm learning so much just sitting here and having this conversation with you. So, this is a great benefit to me just having this conversation. I do want to ask you about Talent C, right? When did you decide to launch it and why?
We started that in 2009, 2010. And it started out as just a one-page static website. Um, a- because at that stage, young entrepreneur didn't really know, do I really need a website? If so, why? And all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, I had a friend that did the one page static website for me. And then I had a young lady that came to me and said, I can build you a website that'll help you move forward. And so we went through a whole requirements gathering and all that stuff, and we did that. And we launched it, and then I think since then, I've done two different iterations of the website, with the most current one that's only been maybe a month and a half. The
Yeah.
most current it's only been live for about that month and a half. And
Okay.
we repositioned the services and stuff, and we made the connection between TalentC and IMC, or the International Mentoring Community. So we we've made that so that that's there. So when people hit the website, they know that there is sort of that separation between, if you want to get certified, you click on the link to go to the International Mentoring Community.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for our mentoring services, mentoring programs, one of the other ones I offer is mentoring versus termination is a
Mm,
service I offer. So you can learn more about those, or you can reach out to me through the website and do that. So um, yeah, so it was 2009, probably 2010 is when I actually probably established my first web presence.
yeah. And with Talent C, you work not just again with individual, but you work with organizations like companies uh, in terms of employee development and engagement, right?
Correct. Right. And the implementation, like with organizations, the implementation of a mentoring program for that's going to benefit the employees. So, like, I've done some work with one, two, probably four different organizations where I've gone in and helped them set up a mentorship program, provided the training, and then provided, ongoing support and that for them as they continue to grow the program and start to see the benefits that they're undoubtedly going to get from a mentorship program in the organization.
Yeah. Now, when you go into an organization to set up a mentorship program, are you training, maybe executives at that organization to mentor so that as employees are in need of assistance, they're getting mentorship from them, or is it establishing more so a relationship with the organization so that as they need mentorship, they're able to find it, whether that's through you or elsewhere. What does that look like?
Um, Ideally, what I like to be able to do is to do it in-house. So train the employees on how to be effective mentors. So I've done two or three. I've done some inside of associations. I think I've done two or three there. And then I've done some in organizations themselves where I've guided them in the implementation of their mentoring program,
Yeah.
and then provided the training. And sometimes it's as simple as, an hour and a half lunch and learn, sort of, here's the basics, and if you want to learn more, we can certainly take that and, expand it. But to help you get started and learn, for the most part, what you need to know, we can do that probably in an hour and a half, give or take,
Yeah.
a little bit of time. But we can certainly give you the tools you need to be able to move forward and become, a mentor.
Yeah. And what would you say are some of the benefits of having a mentoring program in an organization? Like if I was a business owner with, 50 to 100 employees and you come into or to set up a mentoring program, what would you say are the benefits of having a program like that in my organization?
So there's a number of them, reduced turnover rates. So, and it's partly because of the culture. So, is that we can create a mentoring culture within the organization, which then the employees are going to buy into, which is then going to reduce your turnover rate. And in a lot of organizations, that can be a very pricey thing where it can
Yeah.
cost anywhere from 1.5 to 2 times the annual salary to replace an employee.
Yeah.
So, so there's that part. Um, excuse me. The other part is the aspect of creating a culture within the organization that engages employees. So we get away from the high volume of disengagement in a lot of organizations. And mentoring can, and in fact, it does help beat down the disengagement within the organization. It can also provide for opportunities to give the tools that are necessary to new managers and leaders in the organization. I've done lots of work in the past where we've worked with, as I call them, baby managers,
Mhm.
and given them the tools that they need in order to be good at leading others and being able to move forward. So those would be, three that sort of stand right at the top of the
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, no, those are three very big benefits I'd probably add. Those are those are massive. And the the term baby manager, you got to explain that a little bit for me. I think that's entertaining.
Well, what it basically is it's somebody that's, for the most part, just got promoted to
Okay.
another level. And so the company says, okay, you're going to lead this team of 30 people. There you go. We're going to throw you in the deep end of the swimming pool and you've got to learn to swim because we don't have the time to help you. And that's where bringing in an external outside mentor to come in and work with that person to help them develop those skills and to be able to, how do I have a crucial conversation? How do I cope with an employee that is disengaged? How do I do this? How do I do that? And we can cover off a lot of those, and we can do that in real time. In by What I mean by that is when I talk about real time is it happened today at 1 o'clock, and so we sit down in the afternoon and we go through a bit of a debrief, and I'll ask people, so in your conversation with Bob, what went well?
Yeah.
What didn't go well? And what will we do different next time? And are there signs or things you could have seen or prevented from this crucial conversation going south on you? Are there things you could have done that could have softened that or even, created a workplace environment where it doesn't happen?
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine just how exponentially better organizations would be if this kind of service was almost mandatory, for those who are moving up the rung and being placed over individuals, that they'd be trained or offered, the opportunity to learn how to do this well, you know.
Yeah, and it's part of it is culture, organizational culture driven, where we send the wrong messages to those new managers, those baby managers that, you know, you got promoted because you have this and this and this and everything else.
Mhm.
And we kind of say, okay, as I always used to say, now go forth and lead, and that's not the best approach. The best approach is, even if you only did it once a month, that's better than nothing. But have them sit down with a mentor and kind of debrief what took place over the last month, which is why pushing it out that far. Ideally for me, it would be a weekly debriefing with a new manager to sort of get my head wrapped around all the things they're dealing with, and being able to make some, changes that obviously would need to be made. Um, once you start to get out to twice a month or even monthly, we're not going to get the same effect.
Yeah. Now, that brings up a good question on mentoring in general, and then I want to dive into your book for a few minutes before we wrap. Um, there, of course, there is such a thing as lifetime mentoring, where they're just people you're gonna walk with, in life and for life. It's a slightly different form. And then there's limited mentoring. So it's like, hey, for 6 months we're gonna walk together, for a year we're gonna walk together, 3 months, or whatever the case is. Uh, do you what does that look like for you? Are there people who you're walking with, or it's like this is just someone I'm mentoring, I'm bringing them up, they are kind of an apprentice, so to speak, um, and then there's limited mentoring for others. How does that play out in your practice?
It's client driven, so
Mhm.
it's driven by what the client sees. I'm mentoring a leadership team right now that I think we've been 6 or 7 years, where I meet with, there's probably 6 I think it is. Yeah, I think it's 6 leaders. I meet with them once a month,
Yeah,
but I'm also available in between those times, where they can send me a text message and say, I need to talk to you, something's come up, and we set up a Zoom call and we deal with it. And that's outside of the regular scheduled sessions that I have with them. So um I, what I've seen with the people that I've worked with, that we do there's more organizational benefit when we have the ongoing mentoring that takes place. So kind of like what I'm doing now with working with the leaders, but the benefit the benefits to the organization and to the employees who they are leading
yeah,
can be even that much greater if it's done more often.
yeah. All right, I love that. Now, having all of this experience, all of this knowledge, and this wealth of knowledge to offer, you put you put a book together. You put this book out there. It becomes an Amazon #1 bestseller. How was that journey for you? Did you expect it to do that well when you put it out there? The name of the book, by the way, is "You Are Not Alone." I want to make sure I get this right. You are not alone. Mental health mentors take the journey with you.
Yeah.
Right?
I had no idea that that's where this was going to go. It hasn't ended. This is where it's going to go, was Amazon #1 bestseller. And I'm going, wow, you know, who would have thought?
Yeah.
Because when I published my first one, um, it was primarily done to get the message about mentoring out there.
Yeah.
This one, You're Not Alone, was specific to, there's some issues that we need to talk about, and the way that we can alleviate some of the not so pleasant outcomes is mentoring needs to be part of the support structure. And so it was, okay, Doug, it's time to write another book and get that message out there. And that's what I did. And it was, in both cases, there was always this friendly, gentle push or nudge from some of my mentors who said, you know, it's time. It is
Yeah.
time for you to grab the pen or grab the laptop and start writing. It's time. You need to get that message out. And it's the same with this next one that I'm working on. That it is time. There's so much stuff going on is about that, um, you know, we need to get the message out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the reception of the book, being so overwhelmingly good says a lot about what it is you're talking about and the need for it. That there are plenty of other people who also see that this is necessary. Or on the other hand, there are plenty of people who are experiencing it
Mm.
and don't realize, that so many other people are experiencing this as well. And in this book, I haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, but from what I've read of it and the description and reviews of it, I mean, you were really open with your own journey, especially around PTSD on that. What was that like for you to be so open, so transparent, and share some of really kind of dealing with some of your own demons on this journey?
It was therapeutic. Like, I never thought that I would say that, but it actually it became very therapeutic, to be able to openly share that. And, there were times, there were days where I'd be crying and writing and crying and writing, and but I felt so much better because I was able to. I kept saying to myself, if there's just one person that I help, then this whole journey has been worth it.
Yeah. I feel like that's the telltale sign of a really good book when the author's heart and focus is in that place of, this is clearly not for everyone, but if it can just reach the one person that it is for, that's satisfactory to me. And I think that always sets you up as an author to produce something that is deeply, deeply impactful.
Yeah, I lost a dear friend, a police officer, to mental health issues, and I wish that I would have had the book done and I could have put a copy in his hands. Don't know if that would have changed things, but the I can only imagine what was going through his mind, and the loneliness that he was feeling and experiencing, and to be able to tell him that you are not alone,
Yeah.
it may have made a difference.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of people who still need this message.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to be a part of helping to amplify it and get it out there. Um, if you're listening to this, again, this is a number one best-selling book on Amazon that is definitely worth checking out. It's called You Are Not Alone by Doug Lawrence. So if you haven't already, if you want to just pause this episode real quick, right where you are, you could go to the episode description, tap that Amazon link because I'm gonna put it in there, and you will be taken directly to the book. You can just get it right now and then come right back to the episode. So please go ahead and do that. I highly, highly recommend it. Um, Doug, it's been such a privilege to talk to you and hear your story
Thank
and
you.
all that you're doing. If people want to get in contact with you or learn more about you or Talent C or about your book, where are some places that you recommend they start?
We can start with certainly the website, so www.talentc.ca. You can also, if you do a search on Doug Lawrence on LinkedIn, you'll pull up my profile and there's some information and stuff there. And then finally, I'm wide open as far as if you want to send me an email and say I need to talk or I would like to talk or I want to learn more, you can do that by reaching out to me at Doug.Lawrence, LAWRENCE, at talent C, so the word talent with the letter C on the end, .ca. And I'd be more than honored to respond back to you.
Yeah, well, you heard him yourself, you guys. If you're in a position where you feel you can benefit from getting in contact with Doug, he's been open enough to give you his email. So, take advantage of that, get in contact. If you feel you definitely have no one else to reach out to at that as well, uh, then do that. Do that. Um, and also if you're, you know, a business owner, an entrepreneur, or you're just in a season of life where you could really use some mentoring, then I really hope this episode has opened up your heart and your mind to the fact that there are avenues that you can reach out to get the help you need. And if you are considering being a mentor, you're walking with someone right now, or people are asking you for mentorship, and you're not sure if you can do a good job at that, or if you're trained well enough, or if you know what you're doing, or you want to feel more confident, then again, just visit the links that we're going to put there and get certified, get information on how to get certified. That's such an easy place to start, right? Doug, thank you again for this great conversation. I really do hope that I get to have you back on, whenever your new book is released. Be sure to keep me updated, man. I'll be following up with you, and hopefully we can have another conversation.
Yeah, I hope so too. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
My pleasure. Well, guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you on the next one. Take care. That's it for today's episode. I truly hope you enjoyed the show. To learn more about today's guests, including the links and resources related to everything we discussed, visit the podcast page at paulwcroswell.com, where you can find the entire podcast archive, as well as information about my book titled Life Balance, as well as the Life Balance Planner, and much, much more. If you'd like to support the podcast, the easiest and most impactful thing that you can do is subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on YouTube. Also, leaving a positive review or comment is also important and greatly appreciated. Sharing the show or your favorite episode with friends or on social media is, of course, awesome and very helpful. Finally, for podcast updates, special offers on the Life Balance Planner, online courses, and more, please subscribe to our newsletter. You can find a link to do so in the show notes.